Welcome to HB Reddit Stories. Today we will see stories of r/am I the a-hole. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister that my other pregnant sister is planning to name her baby after her deceased son, causing her to cut her off? Am I the a-hole? I have two sisters, the middle sister. My older sister, OS, lost her son late 2022, so it hasn't even been 2 years yet. He passed at 6 months due to SIDS. My OS has been mourning him ever since. My little sister, LS, is pregnant with her first child now and she found out it's a boy. When I was over at her house we were talking about her plans for the pregnancy and the baby and she told me she plans to name her son the name of my OS deceased son and keep it a surprise. I can tell she thought it was an honor thing, but knowing my OS, she would be devastated if that happened. I told my LS I don't think it's a good idea and that our OS would not find it to be sweet and an honor, it would hurt her even more. We argued about it and she said that I'm being dramatic. Even though I know it was supposed to be a surprise, I knew my older sister would be even more depressed than she already is if our LS named her son after her deceased son, so I went against my LS wishes and told my OS. As I expected, she was pissed. She said it was incredibly disgusting and selfish to do that, knowing how fresh it is for her, and that she does not want to see a baby with her son's name in the family, which I agreed with. She was very grateful that I told her before he was born because she said she doesn't know how badly that would have triggered her. She of course confronted my LS and they argued about it for a while, with everyone in our family siding with my OS. My LS called me in tears saying the reason that my OS cut her off and isn't speaking to her because she's still going to name her son after our nephew, even with my OS begging her not to, saying that she doesn't find it an honor and that it would hurt her to see another child named after her deceased one. I told my LS she's a horrible person for still going through with this, knowing how much it hurts our OS. She says I'm an a-hole for telling her since it was supposed to be a surprise at birth and that seeing her nephew with her son's name would make her realize it's a good thing, and she's just trying to be a good person, and I'm an a-hole for making them fight. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. Your little sister isn't dealing with the consequences of her own actions well and is blaming you. You didn't do anything wrong. You explained to her it was a bad idea, she's still going through with it. Your older sister is extremely upset by this and your family is upset by this and your little sister is still doing it. Also, losing a child is traumatic and heartbreaking, and it would have absolutely been so much worse if your older sister came and saw your nephew and your little sister said the name of her deceased child, found out you were aware of this and didn't say anything. This is not one of those "no one owns a name" situations. LS is planning to give her child this name when she already knows it will hurt the OS. How awful. I hope she rethinks this idea and comes up with another name. OP is not the a-hole for giving OS a heads up. Not the a-hole. My young adult stepdaughter died suddenly. She was my husband's firstborn and he loved her fiercely. I had all I could do to keep him alive for the first few months, his grief was so deep. 2 years later my stepson and daughter-in-law announced they were pregnant, and shared 2 names they were thinking of using. No issue with either. But when my granddaughter was born they named her after my stepdaughter. It was a surprise to everyone, and we all struggled with it. My husband was never able to call his granddaughter by her name. He had a nickname for her that he used, and it hurt every time he heard that name, because it just reminded him of what he had lost. 20 years later, every so often, he would just moan her name and have tears in his eyes. I can only imagine the grief of a parent losing an infant, never being able to call her son's name again. My stepson and daughter-in-law intended it to be an honor and hoped having the name associated with a baby, and a very cute and delightful child she was and still is, would ease everyone's grief. It did not. How old is your younger sister? OP replies. She's 26, I'm 28, OS is 30. Next story. Am I the a-hole for allowing my ex-wife into my home? Early yesterday evening my ex-wife came to pick up our son from my home. At the time my wife and I had a few visitors over for dinner. The visitors included her sister and husband, but was mostly friends. Usually my ex phones our son when she's downstairs, we live in an apartment building, and he goes down to meet her. Yesterday she called our son as usual, but asked him to ask me if she could come up because one of her younger kids needed to use the bathroom. I obviously said yes. She came up with her 3 younger kids. She didn't know we had company, so apologized for interrupting, before taking the kids to the bathroom. On her way out, a couple of the guests stopped her for a quick chat, friends I've had since she and I were married, but it was only a few minutes. My son gave his little siblings some of the snacks that were out for guests. After they left, my wife's sister was quick to call my ex rude for barging in. One of my friends replied to her saying something about small kids' bladders, and nothing more was said about it. However, after everyone but my wife's sister had left, my wife and her sister started talking about it and both agreed that it was rude and tacky. They couldn't believe she started talking to some of our friends. When I objected, they said it was wrong of me to have let her in without asking my wife first. I said that's ridiculous. Later, my wife and I discussed it again and she said she found it embarrassing for me to just let her in like that. I asked why, but she said I wouldn't understand. Am I really the a-hole here? I was trying to do a normal nice thing, but now I feel bad about upsetting my wife. Top comments. Not the a-hole. What you did was kind. I think I could be completely off base, but sounds like you all have an amicable co-parenting relationship. That midden boggles people a lot. They expect separated/divorced parents to hate each other's guts and never want to be in the same area together. Your friends knew your ex-wife and probably were friendly with them. They chose to talk to her. What did your wife and sister expect them to do? Just ignore them? Your friends can chat with who they want. I think the next best course of action is to have a sit down with your wife about what she is feeling. Where is this stemming from? Does she feel insecure? Has your ex actually done something that upset her? If something has legit been done, then a discussion needs to be had, but if your wife is just insecure, then that's on her. Your ex will always be a part of your lives regardless of your wife's feelings because a child is involved. Not the a-hole. The kid had to pee, you let them in. Your ex knew several of the people there, they initiated a conversation with her. Your son gave his sibs a snack, what a sweet kid. Your current wife and her sister are being ridiculous. And this is from a woman who also married a man with kids from a prior marriage, so I know about living with co-parenting. There is nothing in what you described that was anything but kind, normal interactions. Not the a-hole. Guess what? If you don't want to deal with your husband's ex, then don't marry a man who was married and had children. Problem solved. However, if you do, be mature enough to handle it. You let your son's younger siblings use your bathroom. Of course she needed to go with them, she's their mom. It's not like you moved your ex in your house. What did they expect to say no? Let them piss outside. Petty crap like that is disruptive to healthy co-parenting. You don't need that drama, and more importantly, your son doesn't need it. Tell your wife to grow the hell up and her sister to mind her own damn business. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to taxi my children to see their dad? My children are teenagers. Their dad doesn't drive, he has no license. Today is his day to have them, and he expects them dropped off at his house, a 20-minute drive away, around 8 miles. He owes child maintenance money which he is withholding. Is messaging me constant abuse, calling me a money-grabbing bad woman, and other vile words, even though it's not me who has asked him for more money, it was determined by the child maintenance service. He says that by me not chauffeuring them around, I'm stopping him seeing them. I've said he is welcome to come and pick them up, his new partner has a car. I'd never refuse him access, but I will no longer drive them to him, surely it's his responsibility to come and get them? So, am I the a-hole, because he makes me feel like one? Thanks. Edit, he has now called the children and said he'll be over to collect them later this afternoon, I assume, with his partner driving. Thanks everyone. Not the a-hole for not taking on 100% of the transport responsibility, presumably he is managing to get around elsewhere without a car or your help, so there is no reason he cannot work out picking up his kids. Having said this, if your sole reason for not driving them is because he is being a nasty crap and doesn't deserve your help and not because it is an inconvenience/added expense for you, then please also consider your kids before making this stance. How will they feel if they don't get to go? Is there any way you could speak to him and the kids about the fact that you need to scale back and eventually stop taking on the transport responsibilities for both parents, thus giving him, and showing the kids that you are giving him, ample time to come up with alternative arrangements? Top comments. Not the a-hole for not taking on 100% of the transport responsibility, presumably he is managing to get around elsewhere without a car or your help, so there is no reason he cannot work out picking up his kids. Having said this, if your sole reason for not driving them is because he is being a nasty crap and doesn't deserve your help and not because it is an inconvenience/added expense for you, then please also consider your kids before making this stance. How will they feel if they don't get to go? Is there any way you could speak to him and the kids about the fact that you need to scale back and eventually stop taking on the transport responsibilities for both parents, thus giving him, and showing the kids that you are giving him, ample time to come up with alternative arrangements? Opie replies. I've spoken to the kids about this issue and how I can't afford to take on the responsibility for petrol costs. I work 2 jobs, earning minimum wage. He earns £80,000 plus a year, so they understand why I'm doing this. I feel awful that I could be made out to be the bad guy, when I'm simply doing what is affordable for me currently, with his lack of payments. I have 6 children with my ex-husband, and in the decade we've been apart, I have not one day, not one time, transported them to him for his visitation time. No court has ordered it, no court has encouraged it, and in fact, he was court-ordered to buy a vehicle big enough to manage transportation all by his grown-up self. The responsibility for his visitation has been laid solely on him, and he has waived it plenty of times by not showing up. The eventual distance he created by his absence is his fault, not mine. Additionally, we are court-ordered to communicate solely through a co-parenting app called Our Family Wizard to prevent similar vitriol coming from him to me. Something similar might be helpful for you. Hang in there. Not the a-hole. Opie replies. Thank you, this makes me feel a whole lot better and that app sounds amazing. Not the a-hole. Responsibility is 50/50 and access is not the same as transportation. For example, I have access to a 24/7 gym, but it's my responsibility to get off my lazy butt over there. The father has access to his kids on the given days. Opie is not locking them up and denying him that, he just has to put in the effort to get off his lazy butt to get them. Next story. Am I the a-hole for making my husband give our daughter the money gifted to us for her future? Me, 26F, and my husband, 32M, had a baby in July of 2023. We had announced a little before Christmas of 22 that we were expecting and our families were ecstatic at the news. I have always wanted to be a mom, since I was a small child. My father-in-law was so ecstatic at the news that he gifted us $4,000 for Christmas to help with medical bills and for the baby. My father-in-law is a half-owner of a multi-state, multi-million-dollar business, of which my husband is slated to take over with his sister sometime next year. In our state it is a requirement to have a social security number prior to opening a bank account, which my daughter in utero did not have. Therefore, it was agreed to enter the money in our joint account until after our daughter was born. I don't monitor this joint account because it's at my husband's bank, not mine. To pay for medical costs associated with her birth, I had used my HSA, covering the full amount by myself. I also created her a bank account through my bank, which my husband was supposed to be a trustee on, but failed to sign the paperwork in time, so my dad was designated instead. Today while driving home from an event, I asked about the $4,000, considering our daughter is a year old, and asked for permission to withdraw the funds and enter it into our daughter's legitimate account. My husband started claiming that I already used the money for medical bills, and that I cashed it into my personal account. I told him that I did not do that and showed him my account from that time period. He said that if it was in the joint account it is gone, and that he used it towards hunting land, which I didn't give the okay to drop that money towards. He then called me ridiculous for even bringing it up, and that our baby isn't entitled to that money as it was for medical expenses and care of her which he barely pays anything towards. I pay 75% of daycare costs, and all of grocery bills including formula/milk, and the baby is covered under my healthcare plan as his health plan is awful from his family's business. We split our mortgage 50/50, but I was the one who paid for the entire down payment. The whole situation was brought up when it did, as I am beginning to struggle to make ends meet, and have been unable to transfer money every paycheck to our daughter's account. I've been putting $150 away a paycheck, as I want to be able to help her get a car/go to college if she so chooses. I explained this, and my husband accused me of blowing through the money again and refuses to check. I told him that I wasn't asking, I was telling him that he needs to check and that he needed to figure out where the money went. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. So you are married to an entitled, narcissistic a-hole. He doesn't pull his weight in the house financially or physically. Why are you with him? At least without him you wouldn't have extra work around a home and would get child support. Sorry, but sometimes it's better to be a single divorced parent. He doesn't deserve you. I would get a lawyer and make him either buy me out of the house or pay me for what he has put in with his 50% of mortgage payments and send him on his way. Not the a-hole. Explain the whole situation to your father-in-law. That will get this solved. Your husband sounds like he's taking advantage of you very badly. Why are you contributing so much more financially? Whoa, whoa, whoa. It sounds like the problem goes far deeper than the $4,000. Why is your husband, the heir to a multi-million-dollar business, contributing so little to the household and his daughter? Why is your money so separated in the first place? Not the a-hole at all, but your husband is gaslighting you and taking advantage of you financially. It sounds like your daughter is only your daughter. It doesn't sound like he is really contributing much compared to you, and spending your joint money on himself without asking you, etc. He is trying to make you think that you already spent that money instead of admitting that he took it. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my dad and his wife they are not entitled to a say in the decision-making of other adults even if they raised those adults? My dad, 62M, and his wife, 59F, Mary got married 16 years ago. Both were widowed with children. Dad had me, 10M then /26M now, my sister, 8F then /24F now, and my other sister, 7F then /23F now. Mary had Jess, 9F then /25F now, her son, 6M then /22M now, and her other daughter, 4F then /20F now. Dad and Mary wanted to make a nuclear family and a more traditional family where Mary would stay at home, be the mom to all of us, and Dad would be dad to all of us and work and be the less involved in the day-to-day childcare parent. I never accepted Mary as my parent. I never called her mom. I resent her deeply for asking frequently when I was a child. Jess never accepted my dad either. She feels the same about him that I do about Mary. My sisters call Mary Mama because they called our mom Mom. Jess' younger siblings just call Dad Dad. Jess and I never considered us all a family. We both missed our late parents and would cause chaos by bringing them up sometimes to put the step-parent/parent spouse in their place and remind them that they weren't forgotten. I'd do this with Dad too, and I would remind him that my mom wasn't replaceable and her place in my life could never be filled by anyone else. I am low contact with Dad and Mary now. Jess had a baby in the last 2 years. She named her daughter after her dad. This upset my dad and Mary. I found out about this a little over a month ago because my wife and I had a son and his name was my mom's middle name, which she was known as by close friends and family. Mary was hurt that I honored one grandmother over the other. My dad also told me I should have found some way to honor Mary. Maybe using her maiden name, etc. They have not met my son and I did not reach out to them. They reached out to me. They told me Jess doing the same was such an intentional snub against our family and them as parents. Mary told me I should have reached out to her and checked if my decision was okay with her. I should have included her and Dad in this. Dad said the same. I pointed out they are hardly in my life anymore, which is how I prefer it, so I'd never include them. I ignored calls and texts for a few more weeks until Friday. Mary told me this was not how someone treats their mother. I responded that she was never my mother. She was never my real mother, who died when I was still a child. I told her claiming she was part of what made me so distant from them. They both decided to FaceTime me that night and told me I made such a big and hurtful decision without discussing it with them, how Jess had done the same, and they rambled on like that. I told them they're not entitled to a say in the decision-making of adults even if they raised them. I told them Jess and I do not need their permission and clearly we don't care what they want. I was called rude, entitled and ungrateful for having such loving parents. Am I the a-hole? Top comments. Not the a-hole. They are major AHs for expecting their kids to just forget about their dead parents so they can play happy family. Opie replies. Mary actually told me on a few occasions that my sisters could call her mama and accept her as their mother, so I should have been capable of doing that too. Because girls were meant to be more difficult for stepmothers and hold on to petty girly fights. But as a boy I should have been more open and willing to let her fill in as my mom. I should have loved and bonded with her easier. I always found it so pathetic that she had that thought to begin with. Ugh, not the a-hole at all. Good for you going low contact. Just curious, do you and Jess, and / or other stepsibs, have relationship? I wondered if you two maybe had a bond over not playing along with your dad and Mary's scheme. Opie replies. We don't. We hardly ever interacted with each other even though the two of us were very like-minded on that. I know for me I hated the idea that we would be called brother and sister just for bonding over that. I don't have any contact with her or her siblings now. All the stuff I know about them is from my siblings, who know about Jess because of my other step-siblings. Not the a-hole. This fixation of some not parents on being accepted / respected / treated as actual parents is staggeringly disrespectful of the kids' autonomy, agency, and feelings that it's incomprehensible. Opie replies. Nobody could ever convince me it's about the kids either. It's 100,000% about the adults and their need for things to be perfect. It's about their wishes, their dreams, their feelings, their needs. The kids are maybe thought about along the way. But in reality it's to satisfy the adults in picture and never about the kids and what they want or need. Often they will be told what they need is different to what they want even though that's obviously not true for adults at all. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel HB Reddit Stories.